Alright, so here's how this is working right now. A bunch of you guys are probably newbies. Newbies probably need help with builds and stuff. So I got a spreadsheet, which is the comp I use and how I made it. We'll get to that at the end of the video. And then I have a bunch of advice on how to craft your own personal builds and how to use solo builds. So the first thing I'm going to actually cover is we're going to take a standard battle axe build. So I have a battle axe torch, plate boots, clerk and I have an advocate. This is like your standard beginner battle axe build. And this is all the skills you would use for it. So, Rending Rage for the double Q, Adrenaline Boost, Blood Bandit, Bloodlust for the Merc Jacket, and Wanderlust or Rejuvenating, and then Energizing Shield. So we have problems with this build from the rip. It's a good starter build. It's going to get us into PvE, some of the high tier PvE, but if you already noticed there's something, it lacks offensive capabilities. So if we get jumped, we're kind of just fucked. Like our Merc Jacket here can just get purged off rip, and it's a 60-second cooldown. So it's a problem. The DPS is nice, but, Merc Jacket being purged off rip. Our mana source is alright, but we're gonna run out of mana eventually, no matter what we do. So the first thing we can do is we can change this to Aegis of Energy, and a 1v1 Aegis of Energy is much more useful. Aegis of Energy is a on-hit mana regen, so it gives me armor and magic resist, but it also regens my mana on hit. This will regenerate your mana really, really quickly, and it's a 30-second cooldown. It's really useful instead of the shield. This is to note this is magic resistance or armor specifically. So if you notice, my armor goes up by a lot, but my magic resistance only goes up by a small amount. This is intentional. It's really good against physical damage dealers like Battle Axe or, say, swords. This is a shield. All shields are calculated before resistances, meaning they don't take into account to this number here, so it's 600 TD flat damage, which is really easy to blow through unless you have things like defense. So this says calculate before resistance, meaning it'll calculate this here, the armor and magic resistance, but will not calculate defense versus players. So defense versus players is taken into the calculation of shields, and resistances are not. So if you have some really high defenses, the shields will be more effective for you, but the armor and magic resistances will be absolutely useless. So we need to figure out something to do with the Merc Jacket. It's going to get purged no matter what. So what we can do is we can drop the the Scholar Cow for a purge. What this will allow us to do is we can be on this energizing shield if we are getting ganked. We really don't want to be on the energizing shield though. We want the unique ability, which is purge. And what this will let us do is it's a point and click ability, so I can just toss it out and it gets rid of all the buffs on an enemy target. These are really useful, and I always recommend having at least one per party, and it is just so nice to have at least one. Whether that be a purge helmet, a heavy mace, or some weapon with a purge like a one-hand arcane, or a helm of valor, all these really work really well in tandem together. So that helps with that solution. So that solves the offense solution. Now we want to play something like, we want to counter their Merc Jacket, right? So what we can do is we have multiple ways of doing that. We have purging, which we can use on boots or their Merc Jacket. We can have an Assassin Jacket instead of the Merc Jacket here. This cuts down our PvE ability to like T6 mobs, but it increases our PvP ability to, say, much better. So we can just Assassin Jacket, and it'll go invis. We get a nice stacking damage buff up to 6 times, giving us 30% more damage on our next hit, and we can just W and E for a nice bit of damage. And of course, that always helps. But you can also just stick in the Assassin Jacket. So they proc their Merc Jacket, you just Assassin Jacket, and you stay out of their range and they can't hit you or see you. We can go Cleric Robe if you're a mage. Cleric Robe is a on-hit Everlasting Spirit. I can't show it here, but you gotta get hit within 3 seconds, and you get a you gotta get hit within 1.5 seconds, and once you do, you get 20% damage, 20% healing, and a invuln. Now the invuln can be purged, so I would keep that in mind, but it's also pretty flashy, so people will know when you're using it. This has the benefit of being in cloth, so you get the nice big damage boost, but, you know, purge is existent, and every ganker is going to carry a purge. You gotta keep that in mind. Well, then, Merc Jackets don't take effect if you don't deal damage, meaning if you damage into a Cleric Robe, you're not going to get your Merc Jacket back. So what we can then do is you could also run a Mage Robe. Mage Robe isn't flashy. Mage Robe isn't flashy at all. It only lasts 4 seconds, but the odds are once it's done, once you proc it and they're purged already, it's already done its work. So this is really effective. It's a 33% defense buff. So it's a defense buff, not a armor and resistance buff. So it's going to proc my defenses, it's not going to proc my resistances. And that comes into effect when I'm using things like Energizing Shield, because if I really, really need to, I can stack defenses like that, and the defenses will amplify the shield's ability to take damage. But what this does is it gives you a defense buff and purges all enemies. So like, if I have a Merc Jacket on, or this damage buff right here, and I proc this on my defense, it all gets purged if they hit me. So Mage Robe, really, really good as a defensive purge. I like using it a lot. I do recommend people give it a try. It's a bit of a higher skill weapon, but it's also not too flashy if you notice. Like, it's a purple dots. Are you really gonna notice the purple dots in the fight? Most people don't. Um, Something we can then do as well is say we have a defensive purge. We can go back to Scholar Cal, and we have our mana problem solved there. If I'm thinking, like, say I want a util, right? I want util on my boots. You can do that. You can do that. So what I'm gonna have is I'm gonna have tenacity shoes on my boots, and I like the short invis and the damage, right? Well, then what are you gonna do when the enemy boots is away from you, because your boots are slower than their boots, and they may be up more often, but they're still overall slower. This is where my friend the Purge comes in. For this, I'm going to use a Helm of Valor. I like Helm of Valor because it doubles as a Purge and Cleanse. I'll get into what a Cleanse does in a second, but we're going to focus on the Purge here. So I boots at them, they use their boots to run away, and I just purge them. And now they have no boots. Which means my boots are up every 10 seconds, I'm going to be able to walk all over them all I want, they don't have boots. If you're going to use a util boots like tenacity shoes on your DPS weapon, you're gonna want some sort of purge, whether that be a one-hand arcane purge, Helm of Valor purge, Daybreaker purge, whatever purge you can get on a selection. It cannot be a defensive purge, it has to be a offensive purge. So Mage Robe just doesn't work here, so we'll switch to, say, like Merc Jacket or Assassin Jacket here for our like build. It has to be an offensive purge for this to work. Because the odds are if they're running away from you, they're not going to hit you. So you just want the offensive purge. And that offensive purge is only going to be used for boots. So Daybreaker and One Hand Arcane may be a little more funky to play with. But Fiend Cowl is more direct. I like a Helm of Valor because, like we were talking about, most people like to run this Assassin Jacket, especially if they're gankers. So if you see where they are and they haven't moved too much, you can actually purge them out of their Assassin Jacket. You can do the same thing with Fiend Cowl, but you have to be, I think, a 0.3 second iframe with it, so keep that in mind. As for the capes, I like Thetford more. You can actually go either Ava or Thetford. So Thetford is a Chain Lightning, is up more often than Ava, but the Ava has a damage reduction. Now, the Ava cape is really, really useful for melees, so like your Battle Axe here. It can, if they're brawling you and you have this Ava cape, the DR is going to be really nice. Same with the ranged. If you can get on top of their range, it's going to be great. So why not just use Ava all the time? Well, Thetford is up more often. Thetford is a 15-second cooldown, Ava is a 30-second cooldown. And Thetford will give you more overall DPS. So take 170 over 15 seconds versus what's the actual Ava here? 240 over 30. This will be slightly more DPS, and the Chain Lightning will hit like multiple targets. You're not guaranteed to hit like 3 targets with Advocate. Just be careful around mobs because this will pull extra mobs. Only use it if you're careful, if you know what you're doing with this, and of course practice this on your own. Now we're gonna get into the important part: potions and food. So I recommend most players use Ava Stew. This gives you, when you're solo specifically, this gives you out of combat regen and damage. So what does that mean? Well, I'm in combat with these guys, right? I'm hitting them, I'm doing damage. But say I just got done with the mob pool, right? You're gonna regen pretty slowly. But if you have Ava Stew, Ava Beef Stew, your health regen goes up significantly, 200% actually. So you're going from 0 to full in almost 2 seconds ish, 2 to 3 seconds, compared to 30 seconds if you don't have a regen food. Now you're a new player, and let's say you just can't afford beef stew, right? Well, there's another option for you, luckily, and this is a cat mouth. This is 3K. Gives you the same regen as beef stew, or sorry, Ava beef stew, but you don't have the damage. Well, what? Well, let's say what I want the damage. Well, what you do is you put the cattail in your mouth. So you eat the cattail, and then you put the beef stew in there. So what happens is you have the regen of the cattail. If someone walks up on you as you are trying to kill your mobs, you regen, you eat your beef stew for the damage, and you have saved, I think, 26k just by switching foods. Now you don't get the out of combat regen, so this may be a little spicy if you face someone that likes to kite a lot. Keep that in mind, because you won't get the regen, but they may get the regen. So keep in mind what food your opponent is on, because it does matter. Now for potions. Now, this is a little how pros do it. I don't recommend doing this for newbies. What pros will do is they will keep 3 potions. They will keep gigs, health pots, and invis pots. Now Nozo, why won't you just keep invis pots? Because invis pots decrease your damage by 50% when you come out of them. And on top of that, if you have a DOT, like a curse staff, a bleed, anything like that, you will immediately get out of invis, and you just wasted a potion slot that could have been used for something else. So I recommend you carry gigs, just gigs, or health pots, depending on what you want. And this is only for solo play. I'll get into group play in a minute. Now, gigs are great for solo. You can also carry health pots if you want. Health pots are great. Don't carry invis, don't carry util. So, something I'd like to look at is like, what would benefit me more? And the gigs would benefit me the most because if I get into a fight, I want that extra health. I'm not gonna lie. Poisons are a trap. Don't damage max. Unless you have a specific use case for poisons, poisons will kill you because you won't have a defensive and your enemy will. Most of the fights are just cycling defensives and outplaying your opponent. Keep that in mind. So, like, this looks scary, right? My boots are defensive in a pseudo sense because I have a temporary invis. My assassin jacket, I can go invisible. And that's my two defensives and my potion. I have three defensives, right? And I want to trade those equally between people. So they hit me with a big ability, I want to proc one defensive. They hit me with another big ability, I want to proc another defensive. And if they hit me with the third, odds are they usually don't have a third. They usually have two, and then I just cycle them. So by the time I need my third ability, one and two are off cooldown. So we good. Um, Healers build a bit differently. So if you're solo, you would want a purge in case you fight anyone, some sort of sustain or counter to sustains, at least two or three defensives on your kit. They can be anything, honestly. Any sort of defensive is good. Even pseudo defensives like tenacity shoes are good. That's what you want. Your potion should always be a defensive. If you are unless you are ganking or a tank, you always run some sort of defensive. Um, that sort of covers like the solo play aspect. You kind of want, so to recap, you just want three defensives, some sort of sustain or counter sustain option to what you're fighting. So like Battle Axe has a sustain option, so I'm going Assassin Jacket. I can also just see I want Assassin Jacket because of the Inferno Shield or Invis. And then I have Torch, but I also can run a shield. I like Facebreaker. I didn't buy it for Facebreaker, but I personally like Facebreaker for Battle Axe. If you also want, you can run a Mozak, but watch your mana there. Right now I have 0 mana cost, so I can freely do whatever. Uh, but if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. Like, if you want help, I will help you. I have no problem. My DMs are always open for people who need it. If you are unsure of something, always DM me. I will help you mix up your build. Of course, if you're dying a lot, I can help you VOD review, whatever. Whatever you need. I am not going to force it on you, though. So, let's get into group. Now, you're probably going to see this a lot in groups. Let me show you guys. I'm going to switch to display capture, and then turn off my game capture. So you've probably seen this. Something like this, right? It usually looks more like... Looks more like this. Right, it's just a sign-up sheet. I don't like this way of doing it. I had to do this specifically for Bomb Squad. But we're gonna take, this is like a plug-and-play type comp that I'm using. So, like, healer, DPS, DPS, support DPS also works, anti-heal, tank, tank, DPS, and this is a 7-man comp, and as you can see, they're all labeled, so everything here is labeled, just nice and easy for us to look at. So we're going to take a look at something like my carving. So when I'm making a build for carving, like a build that I want, I have an idea of what I want, right? I have... So this is a DPS, or support DPS. Carving is a pierce weapon, so we'll go in here, and we'll take a look at carving, right? Carving is what we call a pierce. It means it decreases enemy damages and makes everyone else deal more damage. So the higher the heroic stacks, the higher the damage. Now this is a brawl comp meant for every single type of weapon and every single type of DPS known to man. Every single DPS here is usable in some sort of sense in this comp. If you need help, and I ever call for this, I will happily make a DPS set. And you don't see your weapon on here, I can personally make you a kit that will work in the comp. So we're going to take Carving for example. I have him on Q1, W1, passive 4. So if we look at what that is, right? Even for Xbox players, this is true for you, and mobile players. We're going to teach you right now. So this is your Q, right here, this first slot. This is your W, the second slot, and this is your passive. The E will always be one single skill. So I have him Q1. Why do I have him on Q1? It seems worse than Q2, right? Because you have more speed and less damage. I want Q1 because it has a slight dash and can give you more sticking power to the target. I have him on W1 because Blade Cyclone is really nice. You can also run W6 if you really want to get your stacks up quickly. And then I have passive 4. Why passive 4? Well, the damage resistances aren't bad, and everything else here, like the Heroic Scourge, the DR, like the Deep Cuts is a trap. It'll trigger things like Cleric Robe. I don't want that, so I went with Defensives. Defensives are always a good option. Kinda nice. So what else do I have them on? If you look, they're on Tenacity Shoes. I've talked to most of my carving mains, and they prefer Tenacity. They can also run all these right here, but most of them prefer Tenacity. So that means they're running Valor Helm for a purge. If we have a heavy mace, then they can run any of these. Why are they running Hellion? Why not Merc? Well, if we go ahead and look at Hellion, right? Let's look at Hellion. Let's look at Hellion versus Merc. So Merc Jacket T4, 1000 IP. It restores, we're going to say, 700 health. And it has a damage multiplier of 20%. If we look at Hellion, because it's an artifact item, it's going to be a bit more expensive. Not too more expensive, but a bit more. But it also gets a 25% damage multiplier instead of the 20%. On top of that, it's going to have slightly less armor stats. But for what armor stats it makes up for, it has slightly more health and slightly more energy. But the main bread and butter is Lifesteal Aura. Now, the lower you are, the more Lifesteal Aura steals from your opponent. So if I'm below 20% and I'm hitting 5 people I will receive 400 health every 1 second for 7 seconds. Sorry, I will receive 400 health for every 1 second. Really useful. That means over the 7 seconds, I'm going to receive 2,800 health. Now, this will change depending on how your health scales. So if your health goes higher, you'll get less. But it's still much better if you're brawling people because you're going to be surrounded by people anyway. And this acts as a pseudo-defensive and sustain option for my carving sword. And we have, of course, Tenacity Shoes. This is the pseudo-defensive I was talking about. So you have an invis, so they're not going to be able to see you for half a second, meaning you can get heals. This has saved my carvings multiple times. Which is nice. Now I have Mage Rope here. Why do I have Mage Rope here? Well, it's also marked with the 2. The reason it's marked with the 2 is because it's a healer DPS comp. If I have a healer with me and we're the only 2 people, I want the damage from Mage Rope. The damage is 50% and the defense is 50. You need a Mage Robe to kill a healer, unless you're IP gapping them. Which is, yeah, you want to be able to kill healers when you're duoing these chests. What about these boots here? Merc, Stalker, Knight, Cleric. So Cleric is a blink, I like blinks, Stalker is a blink, and Merc is a anti-CC. Purity is on sprints, so it's just the highest stats for the cost. And then Knight is the shield. You shield dash onto a target, and you have a nice little shield. Now, for capes, I have all these capes. Now, why do I have all these capes? Well, Martlock Cape is a defensive on its own. When your health is below 25%, it increases your defense by 50% for 6 seconds. This is an unpurgeable defensive like a resistance bot. Keeper is the extra offensive. I usually keep this when your when your health is ticked below 80%, increase your damage by 50% for 4 or 5 seconds. This is also unpurgeable. This is a double potion, so double resi pot for these small scale fights. This is a 5-minute cooldown, but double unpurgeable defensive. Again, double resi pot. Ava is a DR, and Thetford's just extra damage. And I have a little description here. Spam Q and call out target pierce. You'll see this a lot when piercing targets or debuffing targets. Like say we're gonna look at carving, say piercing. It's important you call out the target. So carving sword, piercing. So say piercing and comps. That's it. Piercing X target is even better. Piercing Nozomu. Piercing, Butterbow. That's who you're piercing. Or you can give a weapon if you're really good and you know who you're playing with. Piercing Bear Paws, Piercing Axe, Piercing Mace, Piercing Tank. And then that signals to your teammates, hey, this target is taking more damage. Another one is Anti-Heal. Anti-Heal on Tank, Anti-Heal on Bear Paws, Anti-Heal on Target. You'll see this a lot, and I even encourage my maces and arcane staffs to work on this. Purging X target. This is a really big one. It's important you call your purges, because how else are people supposed to know that their mage robe is down, or their cleric robe is down, or their Hellion jacket's down, That's really important information. You have to call it out. So, Q spam to get stacks and call out your pierce. Now we can look at a support or a actual DPS. This is one of the actual DPSs I run. This is a Claymore. Now if you notice, it's on the same abilities that the carving is on. And wait, what's this? All of them are on the same abilities my carving's on. Well, this is because this is max DPS output. This is all it is. It's just max DPS output for my DPS. And of course, they're on the same abilities, but what's this? I have Stalkerhood here. Well, this is preferred. Why do I have Stalkerhood here, And I also have Guardian and Knight. Why do I have these? But for the most part, it's the same reasons. Tenacity, Mage Robe, and Hellion. Hellion for the sustain. Tenacity for the extra DPS. Why, same boots. Stalker for blinks if you're really into that. Why, I have the same reasoning. These are frontliners, so they need to be sustain heavy. So that's what it's built for. Martlock, Smug, Ava. Really, sustain capes, sustain boots, sustain chest piece, utility helmet. Now, Q spam and spam E on pierce. Q spam and E on pierce target. Why am I telling him to E on pierce target? Well, if we look at Claymore specifically, it has a damage buff. Target damage and pass-through damage. So we're going to focus on target damage. Target damage is 830. Well, you're going to take into DR damage resistances and defense versus all in that. So it's going to be less. Pierce targets take more damage, no matter what. So you're going to E on the carving's pierce target. This is why you call it out. So if you pierce the target, you call it out, the Claymore can then capitalize. And that is big damage on a single target that is now a problem for the enemy. This can also be followed up by Q spam and heroic strikes, and you can probably kill. So why do I have things like Stalker, Hood, Guardian, and Knight on here? Well, if we look at those, Guardian is just a support item. Shields. So if we have problems, they can shield us. DOTs also get cleansed from this. So curse staffs, all that stuff. So if the enemy has like curse staffs and there being a problem, this is a really good solution. Why do I have Knight Helmet on there? That seems weird. Because some engaged tanks like Hodge or sorry, Hand of Justice is the hammer, or One Hand Mace use air compress. You've probably seen it before when you're clumping mobs on an Incubus. It's that little white AoE circle that pulls all the mobs. And a really common combo is to AC into Mace, or Hodge pulling them all together. This prevents that. It's enforced immune to force movement effects. This means you can walk through firewalls, and you can walk through fears, you can walk through almost anything that would force your movement elsewhere. So things like the AC on a mace you're immune to that, and they just wasted an engage for 20 seconds. You have like two of these, you're almost immune to maces. It's also a really nice engage for your ball comp. So that's why that's on there. Now, why Stalkerhood? Let's talk about Stalkerhood. Stalkerhood is a very interesting thing because it has two effects. It has a pierce when they're low health and a damage increase. Now, the pierce is what I'm going to focus on. The damage increase is 15%, but the pierce is where it's at. When pierce below 50%, this is a kill. This is why you call out, because Stalkerhood Pierce is a almost max tier Pierce. It's 50 off. It's 2/3 there. This is almost the highest Pierce you can get in the game, and that shit will hurt. It'll stress their healer out, and will almost allow you always to finish the final blow. That's why this is on here. Let's look at something else. Let's see. Anti-heal DPS. Anti-heal is really cool. So, Carrion. So, I have a Carrion here, Carrion Caller. No offhands, Q3, W3. And this entire thing is just set up to anti-heal. So, Tenacity is a 50% anti-heal. Oral Armor is a mana battery. Cultist is more anti-heal. And that for extra damage, they're not going to struggle with mana, so you just give them a little extra damage, and you can see Q spam EL no Q spam when you see an enemy low drop you to secure kills. Use Roar Armor to help with mana, Tenacity, and Cultist to keep anti-heal pressure. So you're cycling anti-heal on a target. That's the entire job here. Now you can actually change this to like the Claymore's ability. You just get rid of the Royal Armor and you're still anti-heal support. So you run Hellion and you're a bit more damage. Now, I'm going to tell you here, a carving plus... What the fuck? A carving plus a carrion caller plus a healer can 3vx. I've seen it done. The anti-heal is too much. And what ends up happening is you just bleed the healer until they die. Royal Armor also lets your healer run Resi pots. So this is a mana solution for your healer, which is big, because they can run a full defensive kit and be nigh immortal. It's really important that you have this. That's why it's important. It's important you have this, because your healer can play more defensive, get more kills, you just feel less stress as a team overall. While that, you're also stacking up tremendous amounts of anti-heal. 100% plus anti-heal reduction with the Carrion. The same thing with the Halberd. The Halberd is just a bit different. It's CC reduction. So, as you notice, Q spam with Stalker Jacket. Or sorry, Q spam for 3 stacks. On target drop so tanks can CC. Keep mana up with Royal Armor and boots for anti-heal pressure. So again, a lot of anti-heal, but different utility on your E. It's just completely changes how you play. But again, Royal Armor for the battery. Let's take a look at something else. Let's take a look at a mace. We're going to take a look at heavy mace. You notice how I have him under hard tank? That's on purpose. So Q3, W2, and any passive you prefer. The reason I have any passive you prefer is because the tank passives aren't too impactful, and it's just like a little customization to people's kit. Now W2 and Q3. What is W2 and Q3? So if we take what we've learned and we go here, well, we go to our W. Oh, look, it's snare charge. And our Q, oh, it's silent sacred crowns. So our combo is W and then silence them. Huh. Meaning they can't cast any skills. Wait, I also interrupt skills? Alright. And for the E is a purge. What does that mean? Well, a purge, think of it like a buff, anti-buff. So things that buff your character can be purged off you. So like merc jackets, druid robes, stacking damage buffs, stuff like that can all be purged off you, and that's all you need. It's really good against one-shot comps. Anyway, let's keep going. Judicator slash Tenacity. Why do I have Judicator slash Tenacity? Judicator is really nice, just a giant AoE temporary stun, and Tenacity is just anti-heal pressure. Why do I have... And I have Judicator and Duskweaver. So I let my tanks choose this because Judicator is just a heal buff and resistance buff. I don't care too much about the heal buff, but the resistance buff is really nice, especially if you get clumped. Duskweaver is a slow and it purges all boots, so keep them from running away, essentially. Now I have Cleric Stalker. This is just blink shoes. That's all it is. Nothing special. Martlock, Advocate, and Bridgewatch. Bridgewatch is a CC reduction, making your CC resistances tick lower, meaning you do more CC durations to them. And yes, their whole job is to stop them from running away from my army of Tenacity shoes. Most of us run Tenacity shoes, so it's literally just to stop them from running type deal. They can also purge buffs and stuff like that. Now, I have supports here. It's the same thing with the hammers. The hammers just play a bit differently. Hammers make them prevent them from running. Now, if we're going to look at something like Pull Hammer, we'll take a look at Pull Hammer. Q3 W2 slash W5. Why is this? And passive preference. Well, let's look at this. So, they're a brawl comp. We're going to take a look at W5. W5 is an inertia ring. It's like an onion ring that just slows everyone in the AoE. Really hard to get through, and it ignores crowd control resistances. Meaning you're slowed by 80% no matter what your crowd control resistance are. And then you have slowing charge at W2 for another slow. That's why it's there. Technically, you could also make an argument for Geyser. Ironbreaker breaks all shields. This is important because some people like shields. Hell, I'm one of them. So this just get rid of them. Oh, and it pierces too. So this is one of those pierces you don't really have to call, but it breaks shields. So this is big. Just a little bit of extra DPS, you know? Again, I'm on Tenacity Hood. Or sorry, no, I'm on Royal Helm for the extra damage, the extra stun, or a Merc Hood. You'll see this a lot. I'll mark some of them as Merc Hood cleanses. That's just cleansing all debuffs and CC from our allies. That's all it does. It doesn't do anything DOT related, but it's really nice to have if you can't find anything else to put your helmet on. The Judicator, Duskweaver, and Valor. What does Valor do? Well, see, Valor is just an armor increase and meant for a very aggressive tank. So if you're being very aggressive, Valor is really good. If you're being defensive, Judicator and Duskweaver are good. Now this is different. Why do I have Hunter in here? Hunter increases all CC you do by 35%. So you can blink or you can use Hunter shoes. Same with I have a Martlock, damage reduction, or increased defense. I also could put Smuggler Cape here, but I'm keeping it cheap. As you can see, it plays a defensive and offensive tank while protecting valuable... Sorry, offensive tank, preventing them from running and also protecting valuable team members from dying. This is a high skill role. These two, most of the tanks are high skill roles, but the only way you're going to learn is by playing them. I literally copy faced Fist. I'm sorry, I don't know how to play Fist pretty well. So if you guys want to give me ideas, do give me ideas, please. Why are there so few crossbows? Well, one-shot crossbow's reflectable and is really annoying and has to play a very aggressive playstyle with a very aggressive kit, meaning minimal defenses. Heavy crossbow is good for brawling. It's not bad. And then siege bow makes you stand in place. Doesn't do a lot of damage. Really bad for brawling. Weeping repeaters, meh. Light crossbow can be argued it's okay, but again, that really aggressive playstyle, so people will get themselves killed. So these two are really good. These are the ones I picked because they don't you can actually stack defensives on these and you'll be alright. Like example, I can run Soldier Helm, I can run Guardian Helm, hell I can run Mage Rub on this. I can also run I'm gonna add this now, Soldier Armor. Like you can stack defensives on these better. So you poke at distances and play your mid range. Go in for kills. Bows. Bows are weird. Bows are definitely one of those things like I'm weird about, but all these bows are really good in certain. The reg bow and the sky strider are really good in particular, but that one is situational because it's only really good against holy healers. But max damage, builds, Q spam. Um, Soldier armor, hunter jacket, and tenacity shoes, or midrib. They do the same damage, but for shorter time. That kit, Martlock. Martlock is labeled as low spec because if you don't have high spec in Mage Robe, this is pointless. So you're running Martlock. You can also run Smug here for double resis. But yeah, again, poke and play your mid-range advantage. So you probably get the idea of the DPSs. And there's a lot of them right here with a short description of what they do. So that's all. Quarter steps are really cool. I only gave them a default build because it was easy. I don't feel like setting up quarterstaffs. But it's just disruption. That's all it is. This is all disruption. Why do I have only 2 healer sticks here for nature? Well, Rampant is useful in ZVZ, but not in small scale. Wild is okay, but on a constantly moving battlefield, you need to, like, constantly reposition, so it becomes a problem. Iron Root is okay, but it needs, like, a 2vx type deal, so it's hard to deal with. Blight is okay as well. It's not a bad healing stick. In fact, you can argue that it should be in this comp. I just personally don't like it because it locks you into a channel. Druid Staff is a single target, so that's a problem. Great Nature is also a single target, meaning you're really good. Great Nature can also be argued if you're like in a small group, like 4 people, but it becomes a problem once you get more than that. And they also have to know how to spread out because it then becomes a bigger problem when they're all taking damage and you can only heal 1. So that's why Forge Bark and One Hit Nature are chosen. Again, you could argue that Blight is in here, but this is just preference, so this is why One Hit Nature. You can also stack defensively better on these 2 steps than you can on Blight. So One Hand Nature, Q3, W3. I don't know why it says W11. This should be... This should be W3. Why do I have W4 in specific scenarios? Well, W4 in specific scenarios just means, like, if you don't have a cleanse and they have copious amounts of CC and they're just trying to CC bot you to death, that's why you run cleanse. Graveguard Helm. Mage Robe / Face Go. I usually like Mage Robe. Extra defensive. And Night Shoes. Now, what does this do? Why is my defense... Why do I have 1 offensive helm, 2 defensives? Needs to be changed to Marlock / Brack. flashback. All right. Why do I have three defensives and a party saver? Well, as a healer, you are targeted the most, so you need defensives to boot. And if you notice, these aren't just defensives. Let's look at it. So protection in nature increases the ally armor. So this is an ally defensive, right? So it helps my allies, but I can also use it on myself to make sure I'm not dying. Also increases healing. Let's look at Night Shoes as well. Night Shoes you can shield charge onto somebody else, giving them a shield, which means it's also an ally defensive. Mage Robe is a support item. If you've ever been attacked by like bear paws and stuff, you know why purge is so important. This single ability can shut down an entire brawl. So imagine purging all the Hellion jackets off a brawl. This is what this does. It also purges any buff. So if they're attacking you with stupid damage and they proc this, they probably have buffs on them, so now the buffs are gone. That is why healers like that. Now Q3 is just area control. This could be argued for Q1. I personally like Q3, but Q1 is semi-valid. It's just harder to use. Or, well, they're both really hard to use, but yeah, more people are comfortable with Q1 than Q3. But that's why passive 3? Well, passive 3 is simply a defense buff. You don't need the healing buff. You can literally get away with calmness. So that's why it is. So you have a lot of defensives, very defensively orientated. Same with Holy. One Hand Holy is very defensive orientated. All these are very defensive orientated because you're gonna get bullied, so you need to you need to you know, be able to get bullied. Now, if we look at this is support roles. These are support roles. Very important roles here. So, One Hand Arcane. Why do I have One Hand Arcane? Well, let's look at One Hand Arcane. Why do I have Arcane in general? Well, if we look at One Hand Arcane, it is a purge and silence, right? That's important. So purge all buffs and silences them. Really important for casters, really important for one-shot builds. I also have them on damage, so they're on a whole host of things. Now, I have them both on cloth and plate. This makes it important because cloth gets damage while plate gets CC. That is why it's like that. So they can either play this D-Tank style or they can play this damage style depending on what you want to do. I also have them on Night Shoes, support, Thetford Cape for a little bit extra damage, but you can also run Lin if you're running plate. But yeah, you're playing really aggressive. And you said you support the be up front, be looking for the opening, but looking for an opening or enemies engage, and then purge all the DPS. If you do it, scream that you just purged and engage. Why do I have you scream when you purge and engage? Well, it's because it's important. That's that whole it's the whole comms thing. If you just purged all the enemy's buffs that they were about to engage, caller needs to know that so they can tell our friendly people to go in and capitalize on your play. That's why. Or it, and if we're gonna go ZBZ example, you scream that you just purged a bomb. Bomb is now useless, and bomb just got killed because you screamed at your Zerg to come capitalize on it. That's why. I have an enigmatic here. Tank support. Tank stop. Enigmatic stops an entire just engage on its own. This is complete support build, by the way. Mimic? Well, Mimic is for Guard Rune. Guard Rune, you can Mimic a Mace and go on Guard Rune. A lot of versatility with Mimic. Of course, I have them entirely on support here. I prefer them on Judy, but that is what it is. And then I have Evensong. Evensong's a weird one. It takes a lot of skill to use, but when used properly, it's a scary shit thing. And I recommend any Arcane player to get into Evensong at least once. But that is that. If you don't see your thing on here, let me know, and I'll either give you a reason why I don't have it on there, or I'll help you come up with a build that works. Um, I tried to get every single DPS on here, but it's difficult for some of these weapons that are made for like very specific scenarios. So I tried my best here. But for those who are wondering, that is my comp. That is why my comp is like that. So think uh think that is the end of my little session here. It's gonna be a 50-minute video. It's unfortunate. But I hope you learned something here. And feel free to replay the video as much as you want. I hope I taught you everything I could. Um, at least for beginners, this may help you guys a lot. It'll also help you with builds. Remember, always look for defensives in your builds. Try to make your defensive stack. Like when you're playing defensives, always cycle your defensive. Never have one defensive up. Never have multiple defensives up at a time. Stuff like that. Purge is your best friend when playing solo. And that's it. You guys have a great day. Talk to you later.